Matt, welcome to the Leanpub launch video for X Days of Go. Thank you very much for agreeing to do this. I was wondering if you could just take a minute to talk a little bit about yourself and about your really interesting book project.
Cool. Yeah, thank you. And thanks for having me. So my name is Matt Boyle. I'm an engineering manager at Cloudflare, and I've been at Cloudflare for about 3 years or so. But I've been writing Golang for production for about probably 6 or 7 years now. I actually, last year, it's just under a year ago, I published a book by more traditional means. I published a book by a pact, which was an interesting experience in itself, but it's tough. And I've been kind of spending more and more time on Twitter. Twitter is really interesting to me. I know a lot of people have got a lot of difficult opinions on Twitter, but I feel like Twitter's divided into like lots of sub-communities, and one of them is the Golang sub-community, if you will. Think of it like a subreddit. And the Go sub-community is actually a really pleasant place to be. Everyone's really supportive. Everyone wants to learn. I've learned a bunch from it, and so I started like writing these longer form tweets when I could, almost like blogs. And I was trying to experiment with using Twitter as like a distribution platform instead of having all these different blogging platforms that I'd used in the past. And then from there, I started to have quite a big catalog. I think I've got sort of 30 or 40 or 50 quite useful tweets now that are, I think, useful, and they got some good feedback and stuff. And people started saying, hey, you shouldn't have these on Twitter. Like, what if Twitter goes down or something else happens with it or whatnot? So people were kind of trying to push me towards other platforms, but I thought like a book was a really interesting way to explore distributing these. So I started actually just taking my tweets directly and kind of putting them into a book format. And I just wanted a way to distribute that. And Leanpub was perfect because one, there's no barrier to entry. It was like really quick and easy for me to do so. And the second thing is I can continuously update it at my own pace. So as I introduce new tweets, I can add new ones. I can remove ones as they become less relevant. I can make amendments and edits to it. And I don't think there's any publisher in the world, like a traditional publisher, who would have accepted my book. But it's actually been really popular. I've been really surprised by how successful it's been. And I think for a few months now, I've been updating it semi-regularly to pretty successful reviews. So it's been a really interesting and fun experiment for me that I don't think would be possible without Leanpub.
Yeah, thanks. It's a really great idea for a book. And one thing I was thinking as I was going through it is like, it's also a really interesting example of how to use Twitter, like you just said, that you can actually do long form kind of posts now, that you can use it kind of like a blog. And I really like what you said about, that, there's different ways to use Twitter. There's different communities on Twitter. I was actually just this morning thinking like, I'm going to write a really long thread on how to use Twitter for people who like are talking nonsense. And just to talk very briefly about that, there are people who will say, oh, you can't trust anything on Twitter anymore. And it's like, if you were allowing the algorithm to lead you around in the first place, you shouldn't have been trusting that, even before the sort of controversies. I follow lots of like credible journalists on Twitter, for example, and I can get lots of real-time updates on things that you can trust that are credible. You should always double check and keep it in mind, but there's so many different ways to use the platform. There are sort of safe and kind of like pleasant experiences to be had on there. You just need to, know what you're doing and stick to your community.
It's really true. But to your point, you really do have to like curate your feed, right? You have to really think about following. You have to like pick away sometimes to remove things that maybe aren't as credible. It's definitely tough and it can be challenging. And I think I definitely understand why there's a huge drop off of people who just don't bother to do it. But I do think it's worth it. Like I've got a really nice feed now. I've got like a really pleasant community of people I can talk to. Twitter actually now has communities, and I started one there, and I've got a 2,000 person strong Go community there too, where we just exchange ideas, thoughts, logs, whatever else. We're having our first community meetup in a couple of weeks. Like all these things have been enabled by kind of some of the newer features of Twitter. So like I'm very grateful for it, and and the whole book was enabled by Twitter. I wouldn't have wrote this book if it wasn't for Twitter existing. I would have probably just done the traditional thing where I'd wrote a blog now and again, and it got lost in Hacker News, and then I lost interest in it, which happens very regularly, if I'm honest.
Well, thanks very much for sharing all your thoughts on Twitter and how you're using it. And thanks very much for this really great book project. It's X Days of Go for anyone who's interested. If what we were talking about didn't make all that much sense, when you buy a book on Leanpub, authors can update them and you get all the updates for free. So that's what Matt's doing with this really great book. So thank you very much, Matt, for being on this launch video.
Thanks so much.